Back row, Mr. The World Premier, Mr. Martin coming at you live and direct. I hope everybody checked out the video we put out about the Central Park 5 and the Central Park 5 deception. So, put out a question mark. Why did they need the Central Park 5 deception? Why is it anytime they need an ultimate distraction, they use African Americans? Well, it's simple. For us, we're a very passionate and emotional race. So it's easy for them to use the past to play on our emotions to get us to react, to be the ultimate distraction for them. So slavery is the ultimate weapon that they created. Slavery is the weapon that keeps us down a lot of times, and it's the weapon that blinds us from seeing the realities of the elite, because we're so busy caught up in the hatred of the past, we can't see what the elite is actually doing and why they are utilizing us to kind of provide a smokescreen for other plans that they have, or to cover up other things they've done. So let's talk about why they needed a distraction. If you go to the day of April 19th, that is also a day of a live event, and that event is the 16-inch gun explosion on the USS Iowa. And I want everybody to do a lot of studying, YouTube studying, reading about the USS Iowa and that gun turret explosion. So the 16-inch gun, of course, were on battleships. Most had 9, some had more than that, but very powerful weapon. And one of the gun turrets blew up on the battleship. So those that don't know about being a gunner's mate, I was a gunner's mate in the Navy. When you're inside of the turret, you're inside of the turret. Basically, you work in that space. So there's not enough, if there's an issue or something goes wrong with the weapon, there's not really a chance of survival for you. You might have 5 seconds, depending on the type of situation, but an explosion like that, pretty much most of the gunners were killed. Most of the gunners were killed. I don't think too many survived that, but that's research you can do to see how many of the gunners inside of that turret actually survived. But the turret explodes, killing what they say is 47 sailors. So already we get our first suspicious number from April the 19th in this thing of 47 sailors. We know 47 is always the number of foundation, and they constantly use that number 47. It has a lot to do with the building a foundation. So why did the Navy need this explosion on that day? So we moved to something we call the 5-inch gun over time. It's a smaller version of the gun. We got one on the front, one on the back, depends on what type of ship you're on. Destroyers will be one on the front, carriers will be one on the front, and one on the back. Cruisers, my fault, be one on the front, one on the back. But we moved to that gun over time. It's a smaller gun, shoots out a 5-inch round, still effective, very effective. But moving away from the 16-inch guns, and think about, this took a lot, because you had to decommission a lot of ships. A lot of the battleships got decommissioned after this time, and you really went to the smaller destroyers and cruisers to do a lot of the active fighting. The more the big battleship, we started building more, a lot more aircraft carriers, because most of your aircraft come off the Navy do most of the flight mission, because we can get closer than anybody. So the Army really doesn't do a lot of the battle, you know, air battle or air fighting. They really never have. The Navy has always done it because our pilots can get closer to the action. So, you know, a lot more aircraft carriers were built after this incident that happened on April the 19th. So a lot really to research in that time. So we had this explosion, killing of 47 soldiers, 47 sailors, gun turret on national TV. Well, it wasn't on national TV, but it was a live drill. I mean, when they were filming it. So they were filming this as though they knew that was going to happen. So you look at the gematria for that day, and you look at Navy. Navy has a gematria of 19. That was April the 19th, where this took place. We had a lot of 52 deaths, 52. A lot of numbers inside of that. You take your 7 and 4, you get 11, so you get 7-11 outside of that, so your 7-11 clothing. Remember, 11 is our master number, so it's already set up that this event is for a purpose. The way they tried to write this event off, and why they had to do some covering up, because it was stated that one of the sailors involved, it was slated that was sabotage. That one of the sailors, one of the gunners, sabotaged the weapon so it would fire the way that it did. And he sabotaged the weapon because, you know, the way the story's stating, because he was about to be outed. It was a rumor that he was a homosexual. He was about to be outed. He didn't want to be outed, so he reacted this way. That is the story that needs to be researched a little bit more. Remember, at this point, you know, actively gay people can't be in the military, and if you're actively gay, that's automatically you put out. So that was the story around that time. So it was a reason why they kind of had to cover up this story. Do I believe that story? No, I don't believe that story. I always, you know, being in the military, I know how we operate. We do things, a lot of shady stuff, a lot of undercover stuff. There's a lot of money wasted on a day-to-day basis. And I'm talking millions of dollars on a day-to-day operation basis, just wasted sometime in the military. So if I want to get guns off the ship and the Congress doesn't want to fund that inside the budget, because this is the time of the Cold War, but you don't really have these big budgets. But you know people are starting, the Navy's starting to change, starting to downsize. They want to build faster ships, so cruise and destroy a lot faster than the big battleship getting there. It's going to take a while for the battleship to get there, but cruise and destroy. And then you got to also remember that this is when the VLS system started, vertical launching system started. So when the vertical launching system started, of course, missiles are now on the ship. So now we can fire missiles off these faster moving craft, but we need money for this. But we got all these battleships. What's the best way to get sympathy to remove the battleships? Unfortunately, make them seem as though they're dangerous. As a gunner's mate, we're very good at the jobs that we do. We train hard, we practice over and over again. We go through pre-checks before we even think about firing a weapon. And those pre-checks are checked by somebody else. So it's just not you go down there and say, oh, let's just put the rounds and powder in and call it a day. No, we do a lot to get that weapon ready before we fire it, and we're constantly doing maintenance on this weapon. So if there's anything wrong with that weapon, somebody's going to pick it up. So the two things I think could have been wrong at that time was either one of the powders, or it had to be a bad powder. It couldn't be a round. The round is nothing. The round is nothing. The round has an explosive in it, but without that powder and that primer and that ignition, and it takes a lot of force to ignite that, it's really worthless. So I think it was a powder that was no good that was placed in that situation at that time. I'm just telling you what I feel that took place. And that powder had to be really, really bad. Also, something had to be going on with that turret for that turret not to allow that round to be projected out. That turret had to be blocked. And unfortunately, somebody knew that turret was blocked up. Turrets just don't get blocked up. And I think it was just a sacrifice of sailors at that time, just a sacrifice of sailors. And sadly, it led to, most of the battleships being decommissioned and the downsizing piece. That's just what it is. And a lot of people don't want to see our government for what it is. And sadly to say, I got firsthand look at some of the stuff that goes on. And, it takes a lot for an accident like that to happen. It takes a lot. And usually, if it does happen, it would be, operational error of the person who's supposed to be doing the maintenance on that weapon. But for a turret to, for a round to be ignited by the primer and not go off and just totally destroy the turret, there had to be a lot of stuff at play that wasn't checked. But, the underlying rumor is that this was sabotage, but you can't have stories like this around for a long period of time, because stories like this, eyes start to look, questions start to be asked. You can't have that. You got 47 sailors, so-called, if that's the number, it could be more than that, killed in this explosion. So you need a distraction. What's the best distraction? Let's get some niggas. And that's what they did on April the 19th. That night, they put together a story to cover up what happened on the USS Iowa. And that story was enough and had enough fuel behind it. It took everybody's focus off of what happened on that ship. Mr. Mokhti, peace and hair grease.